He was just 26, with eyes that had seen too much but still held the spark of hope that had driven him to join the army in the first place. Private First Class Jake Mercer had always been the kind of soldier people looked up to, not just for his skill with weapons or his precision in the field, but for the quiet courage that radiated from him, the kind that didn't need applause. He had joined the service for the same reason so many young men and women did, a mix of duty, honor, and the desire to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. Jake and his unit had been deployed to a volatile region overseas, where the line between friend and enemy blurred under the endless desert sun. Days were long, nights longer, and every mission carried the invisible weight of possibility, of coming home, or not. In those first few weeks, he had seen fear, anger, and grief etched on the faces of his comrades, yet he somehow managed to remain a steady presence. Among his brothers in arms, there was one who mattered to him more than anyone else, Sergeant Ryan Cole. Ryan was older, grizzled by years of combat, and carried himself with a confidence that made the younger soldiers feel safe. But what Jake respected most wasn't Ryan's experience, it was his heart. Ryan had a way of seeing the best in people, of giving second chances, and of believing in the impossible. From the moment they met, Jake had known that no matter what, he would follow Ryan into the storm. It was on a mission that started like any other that everything changed. Their unit had received intelligence about an enemy weapons cache hidden in a remote village, and Jake, Ryan, and a small team were sent to neutralize the threat. The sun was barely rising, painting the desert in pale oranges and soft pinks, when they moved into position. The village was quiet, deceptively calm, like the world itself was holding its breath. Jake had a sixth sense about danger, something that came from years of training and instinct. He scanned every alley, every doorway, and every rooftop. The mission was supposed to be quick, a simple sweep in and out. But as they entered the village square, gunfire erupted from the shadows. The enemy had anticipated them. Chaos descended instantly. Explosions shook the ground, dust filled the air, and screams pierced the clamor. Soldiers were shouting orders, trying to coordinate, but the world had turned into a blur of noise and terror. Jake's heart pounded, but his focus sharpened. He ducked behind a crumbling wall, his weapon at the ready, eyes locked on Ryan, who was pinned down on the open street ahead. Time slowed. Jake saw the enemy fighter lining up a shot aimed directly at Ryan. Without thinking, without hesitation, he lunged. The bullet that was meant for his sergeant tore through Jake's shoulder and chest, throwing him violently to the ground. Pain exploded in every fiber of his being, but he couldn't stop. He dragged himself across the sand, covering Ryan and returning fire until the enemy retreated into the shadows. Ryan scrambled to Jake's side, disbelief and horror written across his face. "Jake, no," he shouted, but Jake's only thought was to make sure Ryan got out alive. With sheer will, Jake covered their retreat, refusing to let fear dictate his actions. Each step was agony, each breath a struggle, but he wouldn't let the mission, or his comrade, fail. When medics finally reached him, Jake was barely conscious, his body battered, bleeding, and trembling. Ryan held his hand, refusing to let go. The words they exchanged in those moments were simple, but heavy with meaning. "You saved me," Ryan whispered, tears streaming down his face. Jake managed a weak smile. "Always. Got your back." The helicopter ride to the field hospital was a haze of pain, flashes of memory, and fleeting thoughts of home. Jake thought about his parents, his younger sister, the dog he had left behind, the small apartment he rented, and every ordinary moment he would never take for granted again. But more than anything, he thought about Ryan, alive because of him, and the bond that now ran deeper than any battlefield could test. Doctors worked tirelessly, fighting against time and injury, and for days, Jake hovered between life and death. The unit waited, holding their collective breath. Ryan refused to leave his side, refusing to sleep, refusing to eat without first seeing a sign of recovery from his comrade. The emotional toll was immense, but in those quiet moments, the unspoken truth was clear. Jake's sacrifice had changed everyone around him, had reminded them of the fragility of life, and the extraordinary courage it takes to face it head-on. When Jake finally opened his eyes, it was to the relieved faces of his unit, the quiet strength of Ryan, and the overwhelming wave of gratitude that filled the room. Recovery was long, painful, and fraught with setbacks. But with every day, Jake's spirit strengthened. He refused to let the injury define him, refused to let it diminish the soldier, and the man he knew himself to be. During the months that followed, Jake struggled with guilt, the haunting memory of the bullet, and the knowledge that he had come so close to never coming home. Yet through it all, he found a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to serve, sacrifice, loyalty, and the courage to act when it mattered most. His relationship with Ryan evolved beyond camaraderie. It became a bond forged in fire, unbreakable and eternal. Ryan, for his part, was changed too. He had witnessed firsthand the kind of heroism that movies and stories only hinted at. He realized that true bravery isn't about medals or recognition, it's about the quiet, selfless decisions that save lives, sometimes at unimaginable cost. And in honoring Jake, Ryan found a renewed purpose: to live fully, to lead wisely, and to make every action meaningful because someone once laid down their life for him. The story of Jake Mercer spread through the ranks, across the country, and eventually to the world. News outlets covered the harrowing details of his bravery, but they could never capture the full weight of the sacrifice, the silent courage, or the bonds it had strengthened. Fellow soldiers spoke of him with reverence, of the man who had refused to let fear dictate the fate of his brother in arms. And everywhere he went, Jake's presence inspired others, reminding them that heroism isn't always loud, and sometimes, the most profound acts are those done in the shadows, without expectation of reward. Back home, Jake faced a new battlefield: the transition to civilian life. The world outside the military was slower, gentler, and often frustratingly ordinary. But he carried with him the lessons of courage, the memory of sacrifice, and the knowledge that life's true value is measured not by what we take for ourselves, but by what we give for others. He began speaking at veteran events, sharing his story, and mentoring younger soldiers. Each time he recounted the mission, he emphasized not just his actions, but the teamwork, trust, and loyalty that defined his unit. His speeches were emotional, raw, and inspiring, teaching audiences about the cost of courage, the power of selflessness, and the enduring bonds of brotherhood. Ryan and Jake stayed close, their friendship a living testament to the day that changed everything. They laughed together, fought side by side in training, and silently acknowledged the moment when a bullet had rewritten their lives. They both knew that courage isn't just measured on the battlefield, it's measured in daily choices, in standing up for one another, and in living a life worthy of the sacrifices made. One evening, as the sun set over the military base where they were stationed, Jake reflected on the journey he had endured. The scars on his body were physical reminders of the chaos of war, but the scars on his soul were invisible, healed slowly by resilience, friendship, and purpose. He thought about every life that had intersected with his own, every comrade, mentor, and stranger, and realized that heroism exists wherever someone chooses to act with selflessness and courage, no matter how small the gesture. The story of Jake Mercer is more than a tale of survival. It is a story of love, loyalty, and the extraordinary strength of the human spirit. It reminds us that the bonds we form, the risks we take for one another, and the sacrifices we make define not just who we are, but who we become. His actions that day were a testament to the ultimate truth, that some heroes don't just live to tell the story, they live to protect the stories of others, to carry their burdens, and to ensure that life, hope, and humanity endure. And so, whenever you think about courage, remember Jake. Remember the man who took the bullet so his comrade could live. Remember that heroism is quiet, unwavering, and often unseen. But it leaves an imprint that echoes far beyond the battlefield, shaping lives, inspiring change, and reminding the world of what is truly possible when someone chooses to act with selfless love. Today, Jake Mercer's name is spoken with reverence, not because he wanted fame, but because his actions reflected the very best of humanity. In a world that often seems driven by fear and self-interest, his story is a beacon, reminding us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, and that the courage to stand for someone else, no matter the cost, is the greatest gift we can give. So, the next time you feel small, powerless, or uncertain, remember Jake. Remember that even in the darkest moments, one person's bravery can save another's life, change the course of history, and inspire countless others to live with honor, compassion, and courage. Jake Mercer's sacrifice will never be forgotten. His story lives on, in every soldier, every friend, and every human heart that dares to love selflessly. And as you hear this story, let it ignite something inside you, a call to act bravely, love fiercely, and live with the kind of courage that changes the world, one choice at a time. If this story moved you, let it serve as a reminder: life is fragile, courage is precious, and heroism exists in all of us. Don't forget to honor those who give everything for others. Like, subscribe, and carry this message forward, because the world needs more heroes like Jake Mercer.